Alright, so this is going to be our introduction to acrylics. We're going to begin with some simple exercises, and then we're going to follow up with a very simple painting. For this exercise, what you're going to need are the following. You're going to need a canvas, and it needs to be subdivided into 6 little sections. You are going to need paper towels. You're going to need brushes, a palette, black and white paints, and water, which I have just off camera, and tape. So the first thing that I want you guys to do is squeeze out a little bit of black paint. Take one of your big brushes, and I want you to paint 3 of these in pure black. And when you paint them, go ahead and make sure that you force the paint into the pores. So make sure that you're working it into the pores. You don't want to do this where the white is still showing underneath. So you got to just take your time, force this paint into the pores. I press firmly, and I like to use little circular strokes. Once I'm done, then I'll go over it with horizontal or vertical strokes just to smooth everything out. So I'm going to do this first one here, and then you just repeat that for the next 2. So once the whole thing is covered, just very gently go over it just to kind of smooth out some of those brush strokes. Very gently. We don't want to take the paint off. We just want to smooth it out. Okay. Go ahead and repeat that for the next 2. Once you get all 3 of them painted, you want to go ahead and clean your brush. The way that we clean the brush is underneath this there's a little grid, and you want to gently rub the brush against the grid. The grid is located opposite of these little holes. And you just rub it, and what that does, it kind of helps take the paint off the brushes. Once you clean them, then you want to get a paper towel and you want to dry it. You're not going to get it perfectly dry, but you want to get as much of that water out. So yes, the brush will be moist, but you don't want to drip in with water. Okay. Next, while this is drying, we're going to work on these 3 right here. Okay. So the first technique that I'm going to show you here is how to work with wet into wet mixing. So you're going to need black paint and white paint for this next part. So make sure that you have both. Keep them separate. And you're probably going to need more of the white paint than the black. But you can always add more, so don't squeeze out a ton. Alright, so you want to start off with a clean brush. I'm going to switch brushes here for the white. And first thing I want to do is I want to wet that just a little bit, and then I'm going to remove any extra water so the brush is moist, not super wet. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to reach in here and we're going to scoop up some white paint, and we're going to paint the top. Now when I put this on, I want to make sure that I put it on a little bit on the thick side at first, because I'm doing 2 things. I'm wetting the paper with the paint, but I also need to have enough paint on here so that when I do the other part, it won't dry. Okay, because this stuff dries pretty quick, and we don't want it to dry on us while we're trying to do our blending. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to switch back to the brush where I had the black, and I'm going to pick up some black, and I'm going to start here on the bottom. Same thing. I want to make sure that the paint is going on kind of thick, not super thick, but I don't want to do this. I don't want to skim it. Okay, once I get it like right where that white's gonna be, I'm gonna reach over here and I'm gonna remove any extra paint from the brush. Just wipe it off. You don't have to like clean the brush. Just wipe off the extra. And then what you're gonna do is you are going to start to blend these two colors together. I use little X strokes at first, like this, so little X's. As it goes up, you're gonna notice that the black paint is gonna pick up more of the white paint and it's going to get lighter. Now I don't want to take it all the way to the top because I want the top to stay white. Okay, and I don't want to like come down. So that's that. Then I'm going to wipe off this brush right here, and I'm just going to very, very lightly go over the whole thing just to smooth it out. Very lightly, barely touching it. So basically, this is gradation, except that instead of doing it with a pencil, we're doing it with paints. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this brush a little bit before I do the black. Dry it. And then just blend this out right here. Very, very gentle with the brush strokes. I am not pressing hard at all. So that's the first one, and that is wet into wet, and we're going from light to medium to dark. Alright, for the next one, I'm going to go ahead and switch to a slightly smaller brush, and I'm going to do what is called double loading. So, double loading simply means that you're going to have two colors on the brush at the same time. Okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to reach over here so you can see it. I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to run it through the black on one side. Then I'm going to turn the brush over and I'm going to run it through the white on the other side. Okay, so I have white on one side, black on the other. Then, when you start working, whichever side you want to be lighter, make sure that the white side is facing. So like, for example, if I'm doing this, as I press down, you're going to see that one side of this pattern that I'm doing is light and one side is dark. Now you can go over it, just make sure that you don't accidentally turn the brush around. Okay? Just make sure that after you do the strokes that you clean the brush before you do another stroke. So I'm going to just reach over here. I'm going to clean the brush and I'm going to reload it exactly the same way. So black on one side, flip it over, white on the other. Okay. You can use this for making like little stone patterns. So like if I needed to make a whole bunch of stones and I didn't want to make them all black and then go back and put in the highlights, I can do it this way. So I'm putting the brush with the white part up and the dark side down, and then when I put in the strokes, I'm getting both the highlights and the shadows at the same time. And you can also use it whenever you want to kind of speed things up a little bit. Like say for example, if I'm doing a cloud in the sky, black on one side, white on the other, then I'm just going to start very gently rubbing, and you can see that it gets me like a little bit of a gray color on the top. So it mixes on the canvas basically. I can always let that dry and come back and add more highlights or more shadows if I wanted to. Okay. So this one is called double loading. Okay, the third one that we're going to do on this one is just a splattering or stippling effect. So similar to when we did it with markers where we put each individual dot in, except that this time we're going to do it by flicking. Okay, so the first thing that you want to do is reach in here, grab a little bit of water, put it over here, and then take a dark, since we have a light area, we're going to take a darker color and we're going to mix it with this water so that it's a little bit thinner. Okay. Now I want to remove any extra because I don't want it to like spill. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to flick. I'm going to take my finger like that, and I'm just going to flick it, flick it, flick it, flick it. And what that does, it creates all of these little dots in a matter of seconds. Remember that you have to do contrast. So since I had a light area in the background, I'm doing the dots with a darker area so they show up. If I had a dark area and I wanted to do this, then I would do this with the lighter color. And that's all there is to that one. That was super simple. Okay, so we're done with the first three techniques, and that has given this a little time to dry. So now we can start working on the bottom three. Okay. First one we're going to do is called dry brushing. So take a nice stiff brush, don't really matter what size it is, and you're going to be using very little paint. So when we say dry brush, and it doesn't mean that the brush is absolutely dry, it just means that there's very little paint and you're basically going to skim the surface. So it's going to look something like this. I'm going to reach over here, I'm going to pick up a little bit of the white, I'm going to load both sides of the brush, but then I'm going to wipe off the extra so that there's very little paint on the brush. Then what I'm going to start doing is very lightly start rubbing the paint. This is why the paint underneath had to be dry, okay, because you are going to be doing a little bit of scrubbing motion and we don't want the paint underneath to get messed up. Okay, so you can see by dry brushing some of that black is going to show through, so you can actually control your values just by, you know, how much of that black shows through. So for example, if I want to make this area a little bit lighter, I'm going to go ahead and pick up a little bit of white, wipe off the extra, but when I put on the top, I'm going to put it on just a little bit thicker, like so. Then I'm going to wipe off the extra again, and then I'm going to dry brush it and let it fade down. So it kind of just, as it goes down, it's going to get a little bit darker, because I'm going to let more of that black show through. And in some areas I'm going to leave pockets of pure black showing through. So this is called dry brushing. This can also be done in vertical or horizontal strokes. So like I can be going in this direction, for example, using very little pressure, or I could be going in this direction. So dry brush blending is what this is called. Okay. And this can be done with any color, of course, but you need a dark background, a dark color underneath, and then you work with the lighter colors on top. Okay. The next technique is called masking, and I'm going to show you two different types of masks. One is called a soft mask and one is called a hard mask. So for a soft mask, all you need is some sort of paper to protect an area, right? Because that's what a mask does, it hides or protects an area. And you can rip it or you can cut it onto a particular shape, it doesn't matter. Then all you have to do is place it on top to protect the area. So what I'm doing is I'm going to protect this upper part right here. So I'm placing the mask there. And I'm going to be working with this negative right here. I'm also going to be using the dry brush technique just like we did on the previous one here. So I'm just going to hold the mask in place, pick up a light color, remove any extra, and then I'm going to start on the mask and pull down. Never start off and pull up, because if you do, it'll lift the mask and it'll get underneath it. So you're going to just pull down. Notice that I'm using the dry brush technique, so I'm not globbing this on. Okay. If your brush starts to get a little bit dry, reload it, take off the extra, and repeat the process. When you remove the mask, the area above it will have been protected, and then you can actually see this imprint there that becomes the top. Okay. Now I can repeat that. So let's say that I wanted another layer here. I'm going to place this to protect that layer that I just finished, and reload my brush, remove the extra, pull down. When I remove the mask, I have another layer. Okay? And you can do as many layers as you want to using this technique. You can also, like I said, cut the paper to whatever mask you want. The second type of mask is called a hard mask. Okay? And a hard mask is basically you're going to be using tape or some other type of adhesive, and you're basically going to protect a specific area. So let's say that I want to put in like the beginning of a tree here, let's say. So I'm going to protect that there. And I'm going to decide how wide I want the space. So let's say that I want my trunk to be about yay far. So I'm going to put that mask there. And then I'm going to paint in the area between the two pieces of tape. So let's say that the light source is coming from the right. I'm going to load up my brush. Remove any extra paint. And then I'm going to pull from the tape. Oops, let me get my hand out the way. From the tape onto the space here. And if I want it a little bit brighter, I just reload the brush and repeat the process as much as I want. On the left side, I want to do the same thing, but I want to do it a little bit darker because that's the shadow side. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of black, mix it with the white to create a gray, and then I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to go from the left into the opening. That still looks too light to me, so I'm going to add just a little bit more black. There we go, it looks better. Now I'm not covering the white. And you can go back and forth. So like if one area gets too dark, you can always lighten it. If one area gets too light, you can always darken it. When you remove the tape, the mountains and the sky were protected, and you are left with this little, what could be the trunk of a tree. Now here's a little bit see-through, so I would actually put that piece of tape back on and rework that area just a little bit more, because it's just a little bit too see-through. So not a problem. Just put that back on. And I'm going to go in there with a little bit stronger black. Not pure black, but a little bit stronger, just to separate it from the mountains. Notice I'm only working this little edge. I'm not taking it all the way over. And there we go. So, super easy. So these are soft masks, and then this is a hard mask right here. And you can add on. So just for the fun of it, I'm going to go ahead and take a little brush and some black paint, some white paint, mix up a little gray. And I'm going to go ahead and put in some branches. So there's a little double loading error, so you can see the lights and the darks at the same time. Or you could put it on dark first and then go back and add the highlights. So you do have choices. And there you go. After I show you this one, I'm actually going to come back and put the suggestion of foliage on that. And finally, on this one here, I'm going to show you how to use your brush to create some little patterns that you can do very simply by using your brush like a stamp. Okay, so all I'm going to do Since this is a dark area, I'm going to reach over here and pick up some light color. And just for the sake of demo, I'm going to go with pure white. And I'm going to load the brush on both sides. And pretty hefty. Okay, plenty of paint. This time I'm not going to wipe off the extra. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to push it into, and that's going to open up those bristles. Okay. Now, using that same motion, I'm just going to start touching, pushing, to create the illusion of like a bunch of little leaves. Right. So if I'm doing like bushes or trees or anything, I can do that. So if I need to open it more, make sure they're using a bristle brush, not a plastic brush, because you can really work these brushes and give them a good pushing without hurting them. And you can actually hear that I'm pressing firmly. Now, the big thing here is don't kill all the black. You need to see some of that black showing through. If you keep going over it, it's just going to turn white on you and you're going to lose the effect. Okay? So, load it up. Open up the brush by hitting it straight down like this. That opens it up, and then start tapping. If you want some areas to be darker, you can load it up with a darker value. So let's say that you want a shadow there. And then I can add a little bit of a highlight right on top of that. Separate those bushes from each other. And try like changing the position of your hand, because you get basically you're treating this like a stamper. So by changing the position or the angle of the brush, you can create different effects. For example, if I wanted to suggest some grass, what I would do is first I would paint this area fairly thick with some relatively thick paint, like so. Thicker than normal, so I'm putting it on a little bit heavier than normal. Not worrying about like. Then I'm going to take my brush sideways like this, and I'm going to use this pattern. Okay, and all I'm going to do is push up. And you can see how the colors are mixing together because I'm doing this while the paint is wet. But I'm not like going back and forth and smoothing this out. I'm just touching, push, touch, push, touch, push, touch, push. So you can use your brush to create patterns like a stamp. Okay? So let's go back to this one here. And I'm just going to go ahead and suggest some foliage where these limbs are. And I'm going to start with the darker stuff first. And then I'll go back and put in some highlights. I find that when working with acrylics, that if you put in your darks first before you put in your highlights, the highlights tend to show up better. But the advantage of acrylic is that you can do it either way, but personally I prefer to do the shadows first and then go back and do the highlights. So now I'm going to clean my brush. Make sure that I dry it. Now I'm going to pick up some light color. I'm going to open up the brush again. Now I'm only going to tap on the top, so I want the tops of these to have like little highlights on them, but I want the bottoms to stay with that grayish color. It's okay if you lost part of your mountain, like here that needs to be a little brighter. otherwise it doesn't show up. And there you go. Now, the advantage of working with acrylics is that, let's say you do make a mistake and you're not happy with it, you let it dry, you paint over it, and then you fix it. So don't panic if you do something that you just don't like. Alright, so you need to go ahead and get these done before we move on to the next project.